Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Slant. Hey everybody, it's Paulie back here on the slant. It's a special slant. It's a it's a happy slant. I'm here joined obviously with Kai. He just went off camera, and then La Reina Creole. And what
No.
an awesome way to begin your Afro-Latino series here on the
I did not expect for it to come up this quickly, but here we are.
Eva Longoria got it into a little trouble. We'll just say.
Yeah.
Uh, and I thought it would be wonderful to kind of not only watch it again, but dissect it from different points of view,
Hmm.
and not not in a bombastic way that we have seen some of our favorite YouTubers approach it, um, but through our eyes. So welcome everybody.
Open.
This is we wanted Lorena to be, she's part of the Latino Slant, and we were talking about a monthly Afro Latino segment, and this news item just this is perfect. This is just too good to be true. So why why don't we? I guess should we just begin with the interview with her quote?
Yeah,
My gosh, of course, character matters.
or not.
Who is in the room where it happens matters. He has a lot of people to thank for this victory, mostly people of color. The Black and brown
Yes.
communities delivered for Biden. And we've been saying all along that the path to the White House ran through the Latino community.
What do we got so far?
So I have two things to point out, and it's a big
All right.
point of contention with me when they have this term people of color. I
Hmm.
don't like that term. Everyone is a person of color. And by saying people of color, I don't like how they kind of like lump people together in a group like that. I don't think that's accurate. While we're all Americans, we have those things that make us special to bring to the table. So I don't like that whole tarring of the brush thing, but that's the thing that they use. The second one,
Can I
and
ask
she's
you what
not.
you said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Because I completely agree with that. I think it's a BS term that shouldn't be used. It's just as racist as colored people, as calling people colored. Like, oh, look at the colored people. Like, that's not okay. And the reason they stopped using the term colored people is because it differentiated between white and non-white. Like, are you colored or are you white? And so that
Right.
was a distinction that was not okay. And so that fell out of, that became not okay to say. You still can't say that phrase for the same reasons, but people of color is doing exactly the same thing. It's going white and not white. Like it accomplishes exactly the same goal, but it's the PC term that is for been accepted by academia as a way to refer to non-white people.
Yeah,
It's
as a way to show that division between white and non-white. And the other point of contention that I have is when you do that, it's like, okay, you're saying, okay, there's like people of color, which includes Latino and white. Well, one, not all Latinos are white, as evidenced by a lot of people in my family, a lot of people in our family. Not all Latinos are white. Not all
Mhm.
Latinos are black. It's an ethnic category. It's not a color. So by lumping it into the people of color category, you lose that rich ethnic distinction.
But it is easy, right? We're American. Different Americans have different issues. All right, let's take it from there.
Mhm.
But um, yeah, I think it's a really outdated term now. People of color. I always think that it's interesting what what the people what those people what people call themselves. You know, and really quick, like with Latinx, it's an academic term. It comes from academia, and then now it's picked up
Mhm.
by the media and by Hollywood. So I don't know
like that one either.
Latino people that use that term, that if they're either
Mhm.
in the business or they're in academia.
That's the only people that do it.
Yeah, I've
The
never.
only-
Latinos
So
delivered
Eva's saying
Nevada, and then we
that
had historic
Latino,
victories
the
in
Latino
Wisconsin,
vote
Pennsylvania, and Michigan because of Latinos, and so Latinos were
for
a
Biden,
cornerstone
at
to
least
winning this election for
Arizona,
Biden.
Nevada,
Well, you know,
and
the
some of the
usual
Midwest
problem with the
states, the
political
Latino
media narrative.
vote came out, which I don't have a problem with her saying. I mean, I don't think
What?
she's incorrect.
It's
No, I
wrong
don't
and
think
stupid.
she's
usually.
incorrect either.
Well,
Because
you know,
that
we've
is
long said,
true.
I
That's
think
a
It's just
this
large
election
facts.
really
incredibly
tested that.
exactly. It's a fact. So I don't
Latino
have any problem
communities
with
are
that.
monolithic.
Well, si se puede is an old call to the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and in the '60s they came up with the term "si se puede," "si se
Yeah.
puede," "si
Oh,
se
okay.
puede."
I
So they
remember
were basically protest chants,
Mhm.
like huelga, which literally means strike. First movement. So "si se puede," right? And then that kind of picked up. If you guys remember, with Barack Obama, he would say that.
Right. You would.
Mhm.
Yeah, which was kind of funny, right? Because he kind of saying in his best
Oh, he
Spanish.
did in English. Yes, we can. Right? That was the thing. Yes,
It's yes, we can.
It's
Right.
and so like that's why I was
Mhm.
laughing when I saw it. And when you said that it dates back to that, I thought that you meant specifically this phrase. I thought it was a play on words, and which it was. But I thought it was,
It is a play on words.
Yeah,
yeah.
it
No,
is.
I
Si se
was
puede
right.
is
I
now.
remember the Cesar Chavez thing.
Yeah.
But I thought I misinterpreted what you were saying.
Well, and it goes back to her connection with the Chicano community, and that she's really well versed. I mean, that she went back to school for it. She's produced documentaries on pesticides and the food that we eat. So there's some, again, it's like this is a person that walks the walk as far as what she sees as social injustice, and it's not just one of those celebs that talk out of the side of their mouths.
Yeah.
She said something about the Cuban and Puerto Rican vote of Florida. The
Mhm.
Cuban vote is historically conservative.
It is historic conservative, yes. And when we talk about Latinos, she'll say that it's a diverse background, but yet talk as if Latinos are this homogeneous mass with just a
Mhm.
common language. Now, from my background, the Latinos that I'm used to interacting with, living alongside, and the ones in my family are Cuban, Dominican, and Puerto Rican. Cubans usually vote very, very conservative,
Right.
very conservative. Puerto Ricans tend to be more liberal.
Which is why she said that in Florida there were 70%, Cubans were 50%. So
Yeah.
they're pretty much split, which to me is like a gain if you're a Democrat.
That has definitely
Mhm.
changed over the years. They
Yeah.
used to vote much more
I mean,
conservatively.
like big time.
and
Yeah.
that demographic has started to shift, but also
Mhm.
there are a percentage of Puerto Ricans who used to vote very, very liberal, that
Mhm.
now that demographic is shifting, so it's more like 50-50-50. Well, no, I
Mhm.
won't say 50-50. We'll say mostly 60-40, but there is kind of shift that way within Puerto Ricans. But there's different I want to say there's different ethnic enclaves within the Latino community. So I think, unfortunately, some people get the impression that the Latinos vote as one monolithic block. Son of
Well,
Black Cup, Black Cup, monolithic block.
it's a good point to bring up, because what binds us together is our Spanish language, right?
Mhm.
That's like, and then whether the mestizo part is that you're Indian or black, you'll have that,
Right.
or you might just be pure Spanish, which is, there's that as well, especially in South America. It's like, how do you explain all that in a, it's tough for Eva. Like, I commend her because she's trying to like get all this information and, in that it's tough.
They have a time limit, a hard time limit.
The power of young voters,
flub
and particularly
of
the diverse
flubs.
coalition, and
Watcher.
really people of color, but specifically women of color,
It's like,
putting
we're
Joe
with
Biden
you.
over the
Yeah.
top and what that means.
Okay.
If that
Yes.
all
Yeah.
just exploded along with, a clear electoral vote margin
This
on
guy
Tuesday night,
talks way too much.
that might have sunk
Dude,
in. Instead, we had a
get
lot
your
of other stuff
question
between
out.
then and now that doesn't really
Yeah,
matter.
right.
And so
Mm.
I wonder
That's
what you
probably
think
what
about that, because
that's what
going
she
forward,
She's like,
Yeah.
this is
dude,
also about power. And does the Democratic Party understand why it's back in power?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think campaign financing needs to be looked at. I think the way in which we campaign, there were so
Is
many
she like
false
at
ads
a
in Florida in
home
Spanish.
office, like
Spanish
a
wasn't regulated the
FedEx?
same as in
I
English,
think
and
so.
Where
I
is
do
she?
think we need to take a look at that. Again,
Where is she?
our work is just beginning. But I
Okay.
want to talk about what you just said about the women.
Ándale.
The women of color showed up in big ways. Of course, you saw in Georgia what Black women have done, but the Latina women were the real heroines here.
And there we have it. Right. She was doing good. Once you say the word but, whatever comes out of that negates what you just said. And what she did in a moment of ignorance was dismiss the contributions of those Black women that she had just lauded. Okay, that's what happened. And from that point, I won't say all, but a majority of Black women watching that, and people were just like, oh, did she really say that? We tuned out.
And you could tell just when she mentioned Georgia, like she wanted to say what Black women accomplished it, but then she didn't have it in her head because it's not her main thing. She's like what Black women did in Georgia, and then she tried to move along and focus on what she does know, and that's where the flub came in. But she was talking about specifically this election and the numbers of this election.
And I get what you're saying. However, the perception, this is what I'm telling you, the perception and why people are tuning out and why people are dragging her is because that did seem dismissive. That's what I'm saying. That seemed dismissive when it's just, okay, this is what Black women did, but Latinas were the one. And when she started with that and with the intonation, there's nothing wrong with being proud with what your community has done.
Excited.
But when she could excited,
emotional.
which made perfectly good sense.
I'm so proud.
Exactly. She could have said, and again, this is a moment of ignorance when you're there and you don't know what it is that you're trying to say. If you had perfectly said that Black women did amazing in Georgia and they came out in droves and they really brought it home for us, and then just go back to Latinas, this is what we did and whatever. But it seemed dismissive with the way that she said that. And I know she was talking about this election, but when I talk about perception and how people perceive things, that's what I'm getting at. Because as we all know, there's a good amount of racism and discrimination within both communities.
No, really?
Black people towards Latinos towards Blacks. Let's be honest, it's out there.
It is even within families.
Even within families,
even
yes.
within
families. Okay. Most people, they're from the 13 original colonies, which became the U.S. states. My family were from areas that were governed by France and Spain until Florida and Louisiana became U.S. states. At that time, we ceased being Spanish subjects and we became Americans. So that's the shift that made it for us. Then you have ancestors, Black people who had to fight for voting rights, first for men, because Black men got the right to vote first, then Black women, then fighting to participate in civil society, and all of that with the civil rights movement and how much work Black people put into that, especially with respect to voting. Having Eva Longoria be so dismissive in that way and how she said towards Black people, basically said, all that you guys did, it really doesn't pale. It pales in comparison to what we've done. And you have the people who see that and it's like, okay, who has been here for centuries? Who has worked so hard the past 50 years to provide these, to help bring these civil rights to fruition that you are able to enjoy today?
Okay,
and
stop right there. Let me get you on that. Latino people, non-African Latino people have been on this continent just as long, if not longer. That's just a fact, right?
Yeah,
it's a different. What you're talking about is a completely different. Unfortunately, a different dynamic and a different challenge that the African American community had to overcome, which which is still like in debate whether they fully have overcome. Right? That's one thing.
Paulie, you're right. It's like Latinos have been here for centuries. But what I'm talking about is the boundaries within the United States. So that's what I'm talking about. So I'm talking
No, same
about
here. I'm talking about the boundaries of the United States. The Mexican has been here. You got to remember the boundary of the United States was Mexico, a huge part of it, and they settled the land. But that's a whole different discussion. But you said something about the last 50 years of civil rights. The Mexican American community has been part of the civil rights since the 1920s. I just want to, like, put that in there. It's cases that Thurgood Marshall studied were cases of Lemon Grove versus the state of, excuse me, I'm going to butcher, but like, let's say the state of California. There was a case where basically this Latino family won the right for the kid to go to a white school.
I did hear about that case recently.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that we've been there hand in hand, and I think that just gets lost, especially this year. And I think it's just a big trigger.
Black people do this too. White people do this too. You can have pride in yourself and have pride in your community without having to, even in ignorance, kind of push aside another one or dull the shine of another community. You can do one without doing the other. And unfortunately, again, due to ignorance, that's how it came off. And then as she proceeds in talking about Latinas, we are the CEOs of the household, X, Y, and Z, all of that. I see that and I'm just like, well, there's a lot of groups, that do that. Now, if she wouldn't have made that flub, that would not have come into my mind at all.
Sure.
If
she would have said, like just a rewording. Amazing what they did in California, in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. They should be praised. Who else should be praised is the Latina mother, the Latino, mujer, like there's just a way of, I get it.
It's like there's a way of doing it. And it's like, I don't know what's in her heart. I'm not projecting to know that, but I know by looking, you can see that was such a visible, okay, we didn't need to go there. And hence why a lot of people tuned out, started getting pissed off, and started dragging her through social media.
Great.
And not to mention Afro-Latinas, which seemed pretty much absent from the whole conversation.
Well, this really opens up so much, just in what we talked about, just for the couple minutes of our shared history that we don't even know about each other. A lot, but what I'll get a lot is from the African American community over the years is being called Spanish, and it's like, well, I'm not. Yes, yeah, but
and again, that is ignorance. I know exactly what you're talking about, because there will be Afro-Latinas who will speak perfect Spanish, and they're just like, well, how do you know Spanish? It's like, okay, well, I'm Afro-Latino, I have background, I have ancestors are Spanish. No, you're not, you're Black. And that's it. And again, it comes from ignorance. Again, in the United States, and I'm talking about the land east of the Mississippi. When I talk about it, east of the Mississippi, hardly anybody knows about Spain occupying the United States. The only people who really, really, really know is if you live like in Florida, because everything has either Indian, Spanish names, usually Spanish and English names. We're used to seeing that. So that history is there. Outside of Florida, I say outside of I-10 that goes from Jacksonville to, I want to say Galveston. No one knows. No one knows.
Well, that's another. Go ahead, Kai.
I actually heard, I follow a booktuber that was talking about, his name's Daniel. He was talking about how when he was young, he moved from one state to another, or like it wasn't even that far of a move. And there was a huge leap in the education just going a little bit north. He started learning about things that he was learning wrong back where he was before. and like integral parts of our history. He was being taught it was because of this, and then he gets to his new school and he's answering them all wrong, and he realized how much of a gap there was there, so there are parts of the country where they teach you incorrect history, and that might be why they don't know. They just don't. It's not history that people feel is really valuable, and so they don't teach it.
Well, you have to remember that it's not until very recently, like maybe, around when I was born, about 50 years ago, that, the school system was, just set up not to teach anything about, the so-called any of the races that lost, whether it was the Native Americans, African Americans, it was all about the conquest, the manifest destiny, the West,
right?
Inventions,
Yeah.
So that's where the term whitewashed the history, that's where that came from.
So yes, the link that I sent you
Are we going down the rabbit hole?
We're gonna go down a little bit,
Okay.
not very far. I'm gonna keep you from sliding all the way down. I'm gonna keep you from sliding down there.
All right.
This, because I saw this tweet, and what it does, as vile as it is, in a way, it expresses how, I want to say, that dissonance where people felt slighted, where Black people felt slighted. I want to say all of them, but how this sentiment was taken from what Eva Longoria had basically said. Now, when she's saying, Eva Longoria, keep your apology. Black people's blood, sweat, and tears in this country are the only reasons you're able to sit on MSNBC and conduct a racist interview. The interview wasn't racist. The interview was what it was.
Yeah.
And when she says, Black people's blood, sweat, and tears in this country are the only reasons that you were able to sit there. Well, no, that's not
harsh.
true. That's extremely harsh, and it's extremely unfair. It's extremely unfair. All people have basically benefited from what's happened with civil rights and all of that. But to make the judgment that that's the only reason, that's not logical. Neither is it fair. So the next statement that she makes is, she says,
"This is rough.
Yeah, this is rough. It's extremely unfair." And she's like, "Black people, please stop all this Black and brown nonsense, because Latinx are anti-Black as well." Now that's a very bigoted statement right there. Just dragging her for no real reason, I thought was just really, really unfair. It really was. I thought it was really unfair. Unfair and uncalled for.
And then on top of that, their responses to her are even worse than what she did. Like, what she did was an accident. It was a flub. And they're out there being openly racist and bigoted jerks.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to bring up that tweet, to see that what she said, what Eva Longoria said, didn't warrant that vitriolic of a response. Yeah, I've seen Black people be bigoted towards Latinos. I've seen Latinos be bigoted towards Black people. And that's the fact, that it's out there. And even in Afro-Latino circles, it's like they get it from both ends. You're not American, okay, but Latinos are saying that basically, effectively, you're not Latino because you're Black. It's this whole, I want to say, toxic mix that goes on when people fail to try to understand each other. The term Afro-Latino is very new. It's very new. I didn't even know it existed at all until I started researching my family, and then finding out I have all these DNA matches from people from like the Spanish Caribbean, South America, and Mexico. I'm trying to figure out where all this is. And then I come across this term Afro-Latino. I'd never heard it before, because I would talk to people who were Dominican or Puerto Rican or Cuban, darker than me. And I'm like, "Oh, you're Black." "No, I'm Cuban." "No, I'm Puerto Rican." "No, I'm Dominican." I'm like, "Okay, but you're as dark as I am. Why is that a problem?" Because they would actually seem offended that I would somehow say that they were Black. And I know Kai, we talked about this before, they probably equated that with being Black American, but also from what I've heard from a lot of my cousins who live in Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, they said that there is that colorist system that is there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's something that it's throughout the whole Latin American media, and the culture is, but lighter is seen as better, and then darker is pushed back, and that's a common throughout all Latin cultures. So as much as there's the identifying with your culture, when someone like you're saying about your friend, where she's like, oh, I'm Afro-Latina, they're like, no, you're Black. It's like exactly the same thing, but the opposite. But yeah, then there is also that racist element to it, which it's nice that I'm starting to see that be talked about more, at least.
A lot of people, especially some people who are from Latin American countries, that'll talk about how racist the United States is. And I'm just like, okay, well, we have protections in this country. Your background in the slave trade is even more complicit than the United States. And they're just kind of like this. It's like we got the mainland United States that it came to be. We got about 1/4 of enslaved Africans. The rest of Latin America got the other 3/4. They went to Haiti. They went to Mexico in the silver mines, a town called Zacatecas. So a lot of them were there. The first slave revolt was actually in Mexico. A man called Gaspar Yanga in
That's cool.
15. I want to say 15. It's the early 1500s.
Well, we got to do a segment just on that.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
That's a movie right there. When I read up on him, that is a movie.
So there's obviously so much to unfold from this, as far as just ignorance with and coming back to America, right? Ignorance on both sides, within our own culture, within our own families. What Kai was saying, like, just the lighter skin family members always got treated differently, and the darker skin, would be called, there's negro, and the ones with the lighter skin are always just treated very differently. Now, actually, instead of vilifying someone who's actually has a good heart and who just made an ignorant comment, like, take a minute to learn about this person, see their background, and because it's easy to be vile out there, especially nowadays. Final part I want to throw at you guys, and we'll wrap it up, is people within our own community coming out and heaping Eva as a SJW trash. Sort of like we had that Diego Luna before. I really didn't appreciate Jeremy's Geeks and Gamers video on this issue. I thought his was incredibly ignorant. And for him to say that they're just eating their own, again, you don't know who this person is.
Clickbait. I think Jeremy sees something, feels a certain way about it, makes a video, and he's known for doing it in one take. So he just records his reaction, goes, "This is how I feel," puts it out there, and then goes back to playing Mario Kart. Like,
all right, fair enough.
I think he's not particularly well versed in the Latin community and Latin celebrities and who we actually take seriously, who's worth taking seriously, and who's not. Like Eva Longoria has a master's. She's not some clown that went to like acting school and it just thinks she knows things. Like, she has a master's. She worked for it. Like, she got a degree, and she went back to school. Like you said, she went back to school for it. Like Elon Musk went back to school to be a rocket scientist. That's a bit different, but it's still someone who had already found success and then went back to improve themselves.
All my interactions with Jeremy have been cordial, and I know a couple folks on the Geeks and Gamers team.
He's not racist.
That's Jeremy's personal channel, so it's kind of like whatever you want to put out in the ether, you can put out there in the ether, but don't be surprised when people push back on it. And I'm pretty sure that he knows that. I did watch it, and I like to laugh about the SJW thing, but I also like to laugh at the crazy people on the extreme far right who were just, whoo, you're a little too nuts for me. I can't deal with you. When he's talking about them eating their own, yeah, it is out there, that cannibalization that you saw going on where they're dragging Eva through the mud. It's kind of like how some liberals think it's funny to get the popcorn and watch when conservatives go at each other. It's kind of, it's kind of that way. So it's like I can kind of, I can see that on both sides. But one of the things that I did take in issue with was when he was talking about, it seemed like they were trying to outdo each other with respect to the quote unquote oppression Olympics. Now I've heard that term passed around, and it's come in vogue, I would say, about the past 10 years. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'll have people on Twitter come at me and say that the Irish were slaves in America. No, you weren't. I don't know where you got that from. All of my friends and parents and grandparents who were Irish, they never said a damn thing about slavery. They couldn't stand England, but they didn't say a freaking thing about slavery. They were proud people that came over here, worked hard, advanced through society. My Irish ancestors are actually here in the 1600s. Some of them were slave owners, some of them were not.
Here's something I recommend for those people. Or is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a lot of that's a whole nother.
That's heavy, but it's just like, it's about that, but it's not really about that. You have a group of people, Black people, felt a certain kind of way because they felt that they got slighted. And if you feel that you've gotten slighted, you can get upset and feel some kind of way about that. It doesn't mean that you're trying to participate in the oppression Olympics. It basically means, you know what? Hey, I didn't like that. I didn't like my accomplishments, being minimized. And I think that was just a dimension that that's a dimension that he didn't show in his video. Again, that's his video, that's his rodeo. Do what you want. But that was the part that I picked up from that.
I did pick up on the oppression Olympics and the color of our skin. It's like, these are real issues for us, dude. We would not like to have them.
That's it is. And I think what a lot of, and I will say this, a lot of conservatives, because I have run into this with a lot of you guys, you'll try to when it comes to issues about race and about skin color, it's not something you can just easily, dismiss. This country had, a war in 1861 because of this. So it's not something to dismiss very easily. It's like, yes, we want to get past skin color, but to be honest, we're not in a colorblind society. If you're saying you're colorblind, that's ridiculous. It's okay to see someone's color. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when you start judging someone based on that. And that's where the problem comes in.
I feel like the reason for that is we have an insufficiently educated populace. We don't know enough about our history and various cultures to be able to appreciate those elements in each other and recognize them. Instead, people, see, they go with what they know and they judge and they move on, But if people in general were more informed about the cultural nuances of the world and even of our own country, then we would be blending a lot better,
And I also think that it's kind of like where it gets to that whole people of color thing.
I was gonna bring it back to that.
There you go.
This is a good wrap up.
Because because it's like when I was growing up, people were proud to be Korean, Italian, Puerto Rican, German. People were proud of that, and they loved sharing their culture with other people. And that was okay. Again, at the end of the day, we were all Americans, but each person brought something special. There's nothing wrong with having that kind of pride. There be festivals, all of that pride in who these people are and who these unique people are that make up America. because the mod of America is out of many one, or from e
Right.
pluribus
Just
unum.
trying to
God,
create
my Latin screw it. But that's pretty much, what it is. And unfortunately, it seems like it's wrong now. It's wrong for certain people to be proud of who they are. Like if you're Irish, there's something wrong with that. If you're white, there's something wrong with having pride in that. And it's not. It's not about color.
If
It's
you're like
about ethnicity.
European.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you're European, like even with a lot of my Latino cousins, there's this thing where you should supposedly feel shame that you have Spanish ancestors.
Mm.
Like you should be ashamed of that. And I said, I don't understand that.
Well,
And
it's because it's because we're almost like double colonized because of English and Spanish. It's all European. What about our native roots? Whether it's a Mexica tribe or the Olmecs or the Incas. Do you know any of that language? Do you know any of their history? And it's like, no, because it was all wiped out, dude.
yeah, history is written by the conquerors. That's kind of that's.
And
Actually,
we're tunneling back and getting some of those stories back, which is wonderful. But and I remember, I think that's one of the funniest parts in Selena, the movie, where Eddie almost is talking about how tough it is to be Mexican and American. You got to know this. You got to know that. You got to know this.
Yeah, you gotta know like twice as much because you need two cultures to relate to.
Well, yeah, that's very much in with with our communities is like we always had to work double. They would say, as far as working in the white man's world. Got to work double. Don't let them say you're lazy. Because forever, we got that the lazy Mexican, which was like, how the hell did that happen?
I don't understand that because it's interesting you make that analogy because even like when my grandparents were growing up, like in the Jim Crow South, they would try to talk about how lazy Black people were. But they had I don't know how many jobs. I'm like, where the heck do they get this idea? So when people said, "Oh, Mexicans are lazy," I'm like, not the ones I see hustling all the time. I don't know who you're talking about.
I love that South Park did a thing where they sent Cartman and the kids to like an anti-racist place, and they went through a tunnel of racism, and they were being yelled at with racist words, and Cartman was loving every second of it.
Oh, nice, Kai, bringing it back
They
to
go
South
through
Park.
a showroom of various racist stereotypes as they explain why it's not okay to stereotype people this way. Then they get to the lazy, and he says, "Now here we see the lazy Mexican," and he like bumps it, and the guy wakes up. Oh, hey, I'm sorry, I fell asleep. I got 3 jobs. I barely sleep. Oh, yeah, I'm so tired. Right. And he like walks off to get back to work.
Right.
I loved it. I was like, yes.
I want to find out who drew that initial cartoon back in the day of some sombrero, like a Mexican guy wearing a sombrero sleeping under a cactus, because it's the same imagery that you get of an African American sleeping under like a whatever mint julep tree or something in the South, and then we never have a care in the world, right? We're always happy-go-lucky, docile.
And it does, and it's so irritating because they would talk about like, especially it's like, oh, you have to work slaves really hard because they won't do any work for you. You don't do that. They talk about how lazy they are. It's like they were doing so much work that literally, no joke. And I read this in the WPA slave interviews for Florida.
Wow.
This one plantation owner, when he heard that the slaves were free, he threatened them with death if they left the plantation. Because they were doing everything for them, cooking for them, cleaning for them, taking care of their kids,
raising the kids,
running the whole house, all of that. But yet the stereotype is that, that they were lazy.
I'm a huge Eva Longoria fan, and I'm also a huge fan of no one's perfect, man, and even our heroes and people we look up to make mistakes every single day. You try to go on television and do so many interviews and say, like, we can't even say the right words now. Here it's recorded.
No.
And we're not pulling out facts like she was pulling out. We're not going like this percentage was this and it was 2-1, and these states right here did all this stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I don't have all my notes, and like you guys know, if you're ever on a live stream and you're trying to do, you will have a brain fart, every now and then, and it's very easy to make a mistake out of ignorance like that. It's very easy to do.
But the truth is, Black women historically are just have been so marginalized in this country, and it's great to see them doing what they're doing. And so I get that knee-jerk reaction that people had, because it was unintentional, but yeah, it hurt for a second.
Yeah, it's like it's like I tell people, it's okay to have that reaction, but it's what you do with that reaction afterward.
Do you come at Eva Longoria like, hey, excuse me, did you really have to do that? Like, from a place of like positivity, like, come on, bro, that was a burn. That's not cool. And then go, or the opposite, which is what we saw of people going, burn the witch,
Exactly.
So don't be the burn the witch.
Well, we hope you enjoy this really special edition of Latino Slant. I think it's always a learning experience for myself, as well as people out of our culture, because at the end of the day, Latino Slant, I want to share just how wonderful our culture is and how connected at the end of the day we all are. So please follow Kai's channel. Please follow Reina Creole's channel. Everyone's doing beautiful, fun stuff. And we'll be back very soon with another Reina Creole edition. Take care, everybody.